thank you to everybody who is joining us. Today is World Mental Health Day, so we thought it would be appropriate to conduct this webinar today. And for those of you who joined our webinar on bullying prevention in the workplace, we've invited Katherine back because she just did such an outstanding job in our webinar back in August. Now, Katherine is a psychologist and corporate trainer with a focus on areas of well-being, stress management, and mindfulness, which is what we're going to be looking at today, and a whole bunch of other areas. So if you do want to utilize Katherine for some workplace training, please get in touch with us and we can facilitate that for you as well. However, today, Katherine is going to be sharing a bit about mindfulness with us. Sometimes, I guess, if you're not familiar with it, it can seem a little bit of an airy-fairy type thing, but I can tell you from personal experience, it works, it's free, and it's really easy to do throughout the day. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Katherine, and we look forward to doing a little bit of mindful practice today, and we'll wait until the end for any questions. So over to you, Katherine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sally. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Yes, my name's Katherine. I'm a psychologist and corporate trainer, as Sally said, and I'm really delighted to be here with you today to talk all about mindfulness for beginners. So for today's session, we'll start off just by defining what mindfulness is. What are the benefits? And there are many, let me tell you. We'll also look at some of the myths and misperceptions around mindfulness. And I really invite you to have an open mind and do a guided practice with me. And we'll only do that for a few minutes because we only have this half hour, but I really invite you to really carve out that time to give it a try. And then we'll look at what can get in the way of us regularly practicing mindfulness. So for those of you, if mindfulness is something totally new, I'm really happy you're here to get you started on your mindfulness journey. And if some of you already are a bit familiar with mindfulness or your regular practices, I hope this is just a further step along for you to deepen your practice and really strengthen your commitment to such a simple but powerful concept, as we will cover. Okay, so everybody, well, what is mindfulness? Well, in fact, it may not be what you think. It is such a simple concept. Now, you can see here there's a quote by Jon Kabat-Zinn. He is one of the key researchers and experts in relation to mindfulness. So if you're ever interested in doing some further reading or watch some videos, please look out for Jon Kabat-Zinn. He says mindfulness is simply paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. Now, it's interesting that studies can show that we spend around half of the day, about 45 to 50% of the day, mindlessly living our lives. So on automatic pilot, where our minds are wandering off. And now when our minds are not intentionally here in the present, you can guess where they are. They're in one, your mind is in one of two places. It's thinking about the past, often kind of dwelling on maybe a mistake or feeling regretful or just being in the past, or worrying ahead to the future. So you can only imagine the stress and anxiety that can come with that kind of mindless, wandering mind that we have. So mindfulness is a chance for us to take the reins, to really exercise our attention muscle and bring our attention back to the present moment. Now, really importantly, everybody, we need to bring the right attitudes to practicing mindfulness. And those attitudes are simply being curious, being open, and being non-judgmental about whatever is unfolding for us in the present moment. And remember, we'll get a chance to practice this shortly together. Now, so with mindfulness, what it isn't, it doesn't mean zoning out. And in fact, some researchers and experts would say it's the opposite of zoning out and living half asleep. We're actually, when we're practicing mindfulness, it's like we're waking up to the richness of our lives. We can wake up to the texture and detail of our immediate experience. So just think, a lot of the time we're walking around almost half asleep, we're missing so much of our lives. Now, mindfulness isn't also about emptying your mind or stopping your thoughts. It's really normal for us to have even over 100,000 thoughts per day. but thoughts are simply processes or activities that are happening in the brain. So mindfulness is not at all about stopping your thoughts, because I think a lot of people perceive that's what it's all about. So we don't want to stop our thoughts, but we want to simply change our relationship to our thoughts. So as it says there, we want to become the observer or simply get into the practice of noticing our thoughts, noticing our feelings, and whatever else our senses are telling us is happening in the present moment. So getting into more of that observer kind of mindset. And it's a very simple thing to do, but just takes a bit of practice. Now, why should we even bother talking about mindfulness? Well, really, we could be here all day if we wanted to talk about all of the benefits. Now, we've been looking for decades now in the kind of Western secular world, really being able to study what the benefits are. We can look at, functional MRI scans, seeing what's actually going on in the brain when people are practicing mindfulness, and indeed what happens to the brain over time when we become regular practices of mindfulness. And we know that it can reduce stress and anxiety because we're not freaking out about the past or worrying ahead about the future. We're simply just dealing with the immediate situation, which alleviates a lot of our stress. It helps us to be more focused. We know that when we're mindless, so when our mind is wandering, often that alarm bell, the amygdala in our brain, is really going off to tell us there's a threat in the environment, worrying about the past or thinking about the future and worrying about the future. Regular mindfulness practices can actually help to shrink the activity of that amygdala, that reactive part of our brain, and actually strengthen the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain here, the more modern part, where we do our good, calm, clear thinking. So, of course, practicing mindfulness over time will help us to be more focused at work, get better work outcomes. We can even be more focused and present with people we love when we're having conversations, or when you're with your children, for instance. So now with mindfulness, it can help us to regulate our emotions because, again, that amygdala, which can become overreactive, starts to be a little bit calmer and not as reactive. We can also start to notice our emotions without having to react to them and buy into them. So, for instance, practicing mindfulness may mean that you can feel that surge of a bit of insecurity or anxiety building, but you can stop and think, that's okay. I can feel that I'm feeling a bit anxious and uncertain right now. I'm just going to watch that pass through me, and you can stay calm. Now, also with mindfulness, we can just be more present in our lives. How often do you drive to work or go on a lovely holiday and you look back and think, I don't even remember really driving there to work? Or how come I can't remember that beautiful day on the beach? We're often not present enough to really download rich and detailed memories, but mindfulness can help us with all of that. And as I said, we can look at the brain through MRI scans and we can see that just 10 minutes a day can really change how your brain responds to stress. And don't we all really want that? We want any help we can these days in managing our stress. Okay, now let's just bust some other myths around mindfulness. Do you need to spend 30 minutes a day? Absolutely not. It sounds like a lovely, luxurious thing to do, but I know all of you are very busy. You might think 30 minutes, no way, I don't have the time. That's okay. Even spending just 10 minutes a day or carving in even a couple of minutes here and there during your routine is going to help you. Think of it this way, everyone. Practicing mindfulness is like training a muscle. You're training this attention muscle. So whenever you catch yourself out in the day with your mind wandering aimlessly, wandering around to the past and the present, you can simply choose to do what we call a bicep curl for your mind. Bring your attention simply back to the present moment. That may mean focusing on your body, on some sensations, on your breath, but we'll do a practice soon. Look, should you stop all your thoughts? No, as we said, we want you just to become the observer of your thoughts. Do you need to sit cross-legged? No, you can, of course, if you like, but you can practice mindfulness when you're brushing your teeth or washing the dishes at night. Do you need to chant or be guided? Absolutely not, but it can be useful to be guided, especially in your initial phases. Now, there are plenty of online or little apps you can use to help you with a guided practice. Ones like Calm, or plenty of them. You can just Google a guided meditation practice and you can be guided. Will it cause you to lose your edge? No, in fact, it will help you to become sharper, as we said. You just can't do it. Well, obviously that's a myth. Any of us can practice mindfulness. Okay, now moving on from that, everybody, let's now practice a bit of mindfulness together. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time there. Now, everyone, I invite you to have an open mind here. Please only do what you're comfortable with. Now, with this mindfulness practice, we'll only do it for a few minutes, so it's not going to take up too much of your time. And let's just remember what mindfulness is about before we actually practice together. So mindfulness is about, at any moment, simply making the decision to bring your attention back to the present moment, but with a curious and open attitude. It's almost like choosing to be a child again and noticing the present moment as if for the first time. Now, that may mean noticing what's going on with your body, with your breath, noticing what's going on in your immediate environment. So we're simply letting the next moment unfold with openness and curiosity and non-judgment. Now, remember, when our mind is off wandering aimlessly, it's often very judgy. We're trying to interpret things and be logical, using a lot of the left part of our brain. Practicing mindfulness is a chance to let go of all of that and simply just be. Now, everyone, before we do this brief practice, just check in on yourself and give yourself a rating out of 10 in terms of how calm and centered you feel right now. Now, 10 would mean, yep, I'm really calm, everything's good, I feel really focused. And 1 would mean, no, yeah, my mind is everywhere. So just use your gut feeling now and give yourself a rating. Okay, everyone, you've got your number in mind. Some of you may be a 5 or 6 or maybe a 3. Some of you might be feeling quite scattered right now. That's okay. Okay, even write your number down if you like. All right, so now as you can see here, let's choose right now to be here. There's nowhere else to go, nothing to fix right now. We're simply choosing to be present and practice mindfulness. So now I invite all of you to sit comfortably on your chair with your feet flat on the floor. Now sit reasonably upright with your spine kind of straight. Nothing too stiff though. We just want a level of geometry in our body to a degree. So you're sitting nice and evenly, your feet flat on the ground. Now you may wish to put your hands resting comfortably on your legs. And I'm going to close my eyes, and I invite you to close your eyes, but whatever you're comfortable with. Now we're only going to do this for a few minutes, so please, I invite you to give it a go. Okay, so I'm closing my eyes. All right. So before we actually practice some mindfulness, let's just slow down our breathing, take some nice deep breaths, just to get into a more relaxed state. So you may want to focus on breathing into your lower belly for a change, rather than holding all that tension up in your chest. So nice deep breaths into the lower belly. And some nice, slow, long exhalations. Now, we tend to induce more of the relaxation response when we particularly slow down that out breath and make it a little longer than the in breath. Okay, so now that we're nicely breathing in a slightly deeper rhythm, let's just bring our attention to our feet flat on the floor. Now let's just simply notice the sensations of where our feet meet the floor. Now, does it feel, for instance, that your body weight and gravity is really pushing down through your feet onto the floor? Or in fact, does it feel that the hardness of the floor is pushing up at your feet somehow? We're simply noticing the sensations around the bottom of our feet with an open and curious mind. Now let's just bring our attention a little higher to where our legs, and perhaps your back, meet the chair. And again, just simply notice the sensations of where your legs or your back or both meet the chair. Does it feel again that the gravity and the weight of your body is really pulling down and pushing onto that chair? Or in fact, does it feel that the hardness of the chair is somehow pushing up against you? We're simply noticing those sensations as if for the first time. Okay, let's now bring our attention a little higher up to our jaw area. And simply check in as though you have a spotlight in your mind that's focusing on your jaw area. And again, with curiosity, just notice, are there any sensations you can feel around your jaw? You may notice some clenching or tightness, and that's okay. We're simply noticing. And likewise, let's move our attention now to our forehead area. And again, simply noticing any sensations that you may become aware of in your forehead area. For instance, you may notice some pulsating of blood around that area, or perhaps even a bit of furrowing of your brow, or a little bit of tension around your forehead area. And again, with curiosity, we're simply observing and checking in and just noticing what's happening around our forehead. Okay, so now that we have some sense of our body and we've done that brief body scan, just keep your eyes gently closed. So let's now just bring our attention to our breath. Now you may wish to put your attention on the tip of your nose, and let's simply notice the flow of breath. Just noticing the air as you breathe in through your nostrils, any movement of your lower belly and perhaps your chest area. And then also noticing the flow of air when you breathe out through your mouth or through your nostrils. We're simply observing the breath doing the breathing for us. So you may notice a cool stream of air as you breathe in, and just noticing that flow of air into your body, then out your nostrils or your mouth. Now, as you're noticing the breath doing the breathing for you, you may also notice that you have thoughts that like to pop in as visitors in your mind. You may notice thoughts about what's going to happen after today's webinar or something you've got to do this weekend. And that's okay. It's totally normal and natural. Now, remember again, we don't want to engage with our thoughts right now because we simply want to be present here in our bodies. But we also don't want to push against our thoughts. We want to have an open and accepting mind and attitude. So it's almost like you're putting out the welcome mat to these thoughts and things that are wanting to pop by and distract you. You can welcome them in, but just let them pass on their way. And then bring your attention back to the tip of your nose and simply noticing that flow of air. Noticing the flow of air in through your nostrils and noticing that breath out. And again, as any distracting thoughts pop in, we want to almost smile at those thoughts, but not engage with them right now. and let them drift off. You may even wish to imagine that you're sitting there with a beautiful blue sky with clouds all around you. And each time a thought pops by, you can pop that thought up on a cloud and just watch it gently drift off into the distance. It's all effortless, and we're simply observing. Okay, let's just take a few more nice deep breaths. Again, just noticing that breath, noticing the wonderment of the breath in and the breath out. You may wish to also just check in globally on your body and this feeling of groundedness and heaviness and well-being as a result of doing this brief mindfulness practice. And then when you're ready, in a few moments, just gently open your eyes and we'll come back together to the webinar. Okay. Now I'm just hoping I haven't lost anyone to sleep there, so I'm imagining you're all still there. Now remember, we gave ourselves that rating in terms of how calm and centered we felt before that practice. Now I invite you to just check in again and give yourself a rating and see if there's any difference. Now we only did that practice for less than 10 minutes, and hopefully you felt some benefit from that. Now let's remember as well with our expectations, mindfulness is not all about just trying to always feel relaxed. It's about training our attention to come back to where we need it and want it to be, which is the present moment. Now, a byproduct of that is that we often end up feeling more calm because we're not taking on the weight of the past or the future. Our attention and energy isn't being scattered and wandering off everywhere. We're nice and centered and calm. Okay, moving on from that, everybody. So I hope you enjoyed that practice. And as I said, there are many guided mindfulness practices you can do online or on apps. So if you found that useful, just being guided by my voice, I really encourage you to keep giving it a go. Even carving out 5 minutes a day, twice a day, once a day is better than nothing. Okay, always start small with any positive initiatives. That's what I'm always telling people. Okay, right. So what will then realistically get in the way of you practicing mindfulness? Now, many of us may walk away from today's webinar thinking, hopefully, I'm hoping you will think this. You'll walk away and think that was really good and I feel great and I'm really going to commit to this. But look, realistically, there are many things in our lives that will get in the way. Now, here are some common barriers. You might just think, well, it's actually quite boring. I gave it a go and I could be watching Netflix. Another one might be, I just keep forgetting. I mean to do it, but look, I'm busy. You might just think it's not working. I'm not seeing any big benefits yet. And look at the good one, my phone always wins, it's always going to be more attractive. Now, we know these are realistic barriers, so let's just address them now while we're here. Rather than thinking it's boring, how about being curious about that sense of boredom and actually asking yourself, okay, well, what could be underneath that boredom? The present moment is full of richness and details that we're often not aware of at all because it's almost like we are asleep. So we need to kind of wake up and notice what could be underneath that boredom. What about doing some short practices? As I said, doesn't need to be 30 minutes a day. I would also suggest habit stacking if you are time poor. So you may want to make your morning teeth brushing little session your mindfulness practice. Now that would be an example of informal mindfulness because it means you're not changing your routine. You're not sitting there like we just did. That was a formal mindfulness practice. You can go about your normal routine and no one would even know you're practicing mindfulness. So for instance, when you're brushing your teeth, you may choose to make those 2 minutes or so a time for you to purely focus on the sensations of brushing your teeth. What does it taste like with the toothpaste? What does that toothbrush feel like? What noises can you feel? here, sorry, what about the water that's running? Really absorb yourself in the details of brushing your teeth. Now, remember down the track, simply practicing that mindfulness while you're brushing your teeth is going to be like a bicep curl for your attention muscle. So therefore, later on, maybe that week, when you really want to pay attention in a meeting or try to work out a concept that requires your full attention, you would have already exercised that attention muscle. So it's going to be a little bit stronger. So habit stacking is a good idea. Maybe do it with a buddy, make each other accountable that you're both going to start practicing mindfulness every day. That's why I love some of the apps, even like the health app, or some people have with their health fund kind of points that they get by practicing mindfulness or doing a certain number of steps. So if there's anything that that works for you that will make you accountable, I really encourage you to give it a go. And look, let's just not be a perfectionist about it. Just trust the process. I invite you all to do further research and reading, particularly by Jon Kabat-Zinn that I mentioned. He's got a book called Full Catastrophe Living, because he tells us in a nutshell, our life is, of course, full of ups and downs, wonderful moments, really difficult times, but mindfulness can help us to ride the waves of all the different experiences in our lives. And he's got plenty of other books as well. I believe there's one, I think it's even called Mindfulness for Beginners. So yeah, have a look for Jon Kabat-Zinn. Now, we'll finish today's webinar with this quote by Deepak Chopra, which says that, look, meditation, and mindfulness is a form of meditation, is not a way of making your mind quiet. It's a way of entering into the quiet that's already there. Or as I said, it could be entering into the richness and wonderment that you may feel underlies your perhaps superficial sense of boredom, for instance. So it's getting into that space and observing what might be there that we've been too busy and mindless to notice before. So it can really add this level of richness to our lives. Okay, given that we've got 2 minutes left here, are there any final questions or reflections that anyone would like to share or ask? Anybody? No? Well, what I'm really hoping is that everyone is feeling that sense of calm after doing that activity, and I really hope I've inspired you to really make mindfulness more a part of your life. Now, when we think about the modern world and the future, as we know, we're getting more and more distracted. There are more and more devices and apps and things trying to take our attention. So let's make that commitment to ourselves right here and now that we are going to try to control our attention muscle and develop our attention muscle. And practicing regular mindfulness is the way to do it. Now, thanks you, everybody, Katherine, for being here. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. I found that so helpful. I think you used a word scattered, and I didn't realize how scattered I was feeling until joining that mindfulness practice. And it really doesn't take long to kind of bring you back down to earth, does it?
Yeah, thank you, Sally. And look, you're not alone. I think most of us feel scattered. And that exercise we did was less than 10 minutes. So it's amazing what a few minutes can do.
It really is just, putting your feet flat on the ground and bringing you back down to earth for a couple of minutes, I think really does wonders for setting you up for the rest of the day as well.
That's it. Yes. I'm pleased you found it useful, Sally.
Thank you. I really did. And for those of you who do have the Leap Well Plus app available to you, please know that there are a whole bunch of resources in there, including some mindfulness practices for you to listen to. So if you don't already have the app, please download the app and then ask your HR representative from your organization for your QR code and your access code, and you can download our app and utilize all of the mindfulness practices within there as well. So thank you so much, Katherine. Hopefully we can get you back soon. That was really, really great. Lots of people saying thank you in the chat as well. So hope that really sets everyone up for a really great Friday, heading on into the weekend, and we will share the recording following this. So thanks again. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sally, and everybody. See you next time.